Do you think the recession will happen soon, 2023 or 2024? I don't know. It depends on what you mean by recession, too. One of my first business school classes, the professor asked, what is the definition of a recession? And I raised my hand as the, like, go-getter kid, the over-eager kid. 2 sequential quarters of decline in GDP growth. And the professor said, wrong. And I looked at him like, what? You know, I know what a recession is. And he said, no, a recession is when my friends can't find a job. A depression is when I can't find a job. And it's one of these old jokes. But recession means different things to everybody. And the technical definition of a recession is not always the same thing as what the practical thing is. And we haven't had much unemployment, which I think personally, no matter what you look at as GDP growth, you have to have severe unemployment to call something a recession, in my opinion. But you could have a technical recession that doesn't do anything.
Can I ask you a question about your recession comment?
Sure.
There's like misnomers with the whole concept, right?
Yeah.
So like two quarters of negative GDP growth, right? So like you got technical reasons why you can call it that, right? Which is cool. But then right now we're in this weird phase where job growth is up and unemployment's down.
Yep.
So it's like this weird phase that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
But I think the problem is when you look at the statistics, it's like a false positive kind of.
Yep.
Because you have underemployment, you have people that have left the job workforce completely, and you have like people that are making money, they can't keep up with inflation. So it's like, okay, let's say that like Biden claims 700,000 jobs were created, but like, are those real jobs that create value for an individual? You know, like, and that's kind of where I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying like, technically we're in a recession according to the textbook. But are the statistics they're putting out, you know, and I don't know the answer, you know, and that's what I wonder, I question it.
Well, there's a lot of ways to analyze this that economists have thought about over a long period of time. There's, I remember some of these from college, U1, U2, U3, all the way to U6. So you can look at job participation rate and analyze that. And I mean, in general, we've had good employment, we've had low growth, and now we have high inflation. I'm not an economist. I actually tend to ignore this kind of stuff. I think my college professor's joke is actually really important. That, you know, the statistical interpretation of economic activity it actually gets revised after the fact. There's no great way to tell at any given time whether there is an actual quote unquote recession or not. I think the important thing is, can my friends find jobs and do I have a job? Those are basically the best indicators of are times good or are times not. Can I fill up a full gas tank? Can I put food on the table? Those are kind of what matter. And I think the answer is, from that perspective, is probably we're somewhere in the middle here, right? Things aren't so great, but things aren't so bad. And, we'll sort of see where things come. I think that, it's not hard for a politician to engineer the feeling that things are great, even if it breaks things in the long run. And that's the kind of thing that I worry about, is like protectionism, overspending. When Biden sort of threw out all this cash out there during COVID, which probably the same thing that I would have done, and I think a lot of other people would have done, but overspent the cash when the money printer, it created inflation, or at least we think it might have created inflation. It also came with a supply chain shock, which didn't help. So again, I'm no economist, but I think and again, part of it is like, when you think about economics, you have to really think about means that people have a very hard time doing this, unless you've been trained, which I certainly haven't, to think about these things really carefully, because we tend to think about our own personal experiences, which are completely irrelevant, right, to thinking about, wide scale things like economics and GDP per capita and whatever. I think that technology in America is the one thing you can rely on. We have a technological advantage that comes from just the kind of people that like to live in America and the kind of policies that we have. I think that that's the only thing that we really have to watch out for, is people like Elizabeth Warren. I'm picking on her a little bit, but I think like technophobes and regulatory sort of bureaucrats are probably the biggest threats to economic success. And if you look at countries that have sort of like these deep bureaucratic ties, they tend to sort of not have much technological innovation. And I think actually Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter is really emblematic of kind of like this struggle of freedom versus bureaucracy. And I'm really thrilled for one, of course, as you can imagine, that the idea of like maybe being having to pay for a blue check mark, um, which simply just can link your credit card to your name. I mean, that's all it really is. It can be at $2. It doesn't have to be much, but that idea is making people's minds blow up. Like everybody should have a blue check mark. I mean, it isn't hard if you have John Smith's credit card and you're paying for John Smith using John Smith, and it all matches up with your name on Twitter. Like, I don't see why that isn't a blue check mark. Of course, there are probably ways to abuse it and things like that, but I think 90% of people could probably be safely verified on Twitter, and it'd be a shame to not sort of be able to do that.
The only downside, and like from a capitalist view, you're right. Like, of course, like it's basically KYC, and like so from the capitalist side, it's and what he's doing is cool, and I agree with it. The only down part is, unfortunately, Twitter is regulated internationally by different countries, and every country that Twitter operates in has to follow like local laws, right? So the problem you run into is like, let's say I'm in a government, or I'm in a country where the government's a little bit radical, and I'm like against that government, and I use Twitter or I use some other social media medium as a way to get the message out that these people are doing against the people.
Yeah.
And then
that's what it's here for.
Twitter says, I want to verify you, and you got to do verification. You got all the danger is, and Twitter has to follow local laws within that country. So you expose your private information to these countries.
Well, I don't think he's doing anything different, right? So I think that you can be verified. I'm sure Elon Musk is not going to try to collect the $2 from Katy Perry, who's verified. I think this is more about people like you and me who have no chance of getting verification. Maybe not me, but maybe you or anybody else here, excluding any pseudo celebrity.
Of course, it's for regular people, but the problem is, like, for example, one of the top investors in Twitter's takeover was the Saudi government, right?
Sure.
Like investors who purposely stifle free speech, and they want to collect user data for anybody that's in their country using Twitter. So you verify using your Twitter account, and you go through KYC and verify in Saudi Arabia, for example. You're giving over the government your information.
They're the worst, and that's why I think that Twitter should set up a sort of hostile system. I mean, to the extent the guy says it's all about free speech, well, exactly. Don't comply. Why comply with Europeans regularly? I doubt their European ad business is very big. By the way, I'm sure all their ads are US based.
They're worse than most of like I was just using one example, but the EU has gone after social platforms for ever since they were created. So they're actually worse than.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think, but the point is, I totally agree. I mean, I think that if there's a way to use Twitter to stand up against totalitarianism at the expense of business, I think that'd be great. I just think that it takes a really bold leader to do that kind of thing, and I doubt that, the sort of the leadership before would have been willing to do that. So I hope that the new leadership might be willing to take a stand and say, where you're either not going to comply or whatever. And of course, the internet is made to be free, and whether it's Twitter or a new protocol, there will be uncensorable social media on the internet. It's just a matter of time.
Most abuse is not leaked by a person that's with a verified blue check.
And I don't think there's going to be any force, right? There'll always be anons on Twitter.
And that's the hope that Elon understands, that like it's not all about like verifying users. It's also about allowing free speech and free thought from people that are anonymous, because if they're not anonymous, they might be killed.
Yeah, I think so. And I think on the blockchain, at least, there are ways to have that bifurcation of this is a real person. You're never going to know anything about their identity, but you can confirm it's a real person. And I think that's partly what he's trying to do, is get rid of the bot problem by saying, listen, pay $2 a month, or even $2 a year. I'm sure he won't like that price point, but some amount that just links to a credit card where you can feel relatively comfortable that at least there's a real person there. Now, the problem is the number of credit cards that exist out there is also a pretty large number itself. So it's not necessarily easy to assume that that's a solution. I think you're also you're advocating for a relatively small proportion. Like, it sounds like you're privacy hawk. Like, a lot of people want to be on Twitter and chat about stuff that I think most people, all they care about is the field they're in. They want to chat with the people that they connect with in their field of interest, and privacy is, I mean, the privacy is not a hot button issue in the world. I think TikTok.
What I'm saying is, if you're a Brazilian right now, a good example, like where I don't agree with you, like in Brazil, you have an entire election that shifted from one political party extreme side to the other.
Okay, but most of Twitter revenue is U.S. revenue, and it's a U.S. company, and they don't really do much outside of the U.S. To be frank, if you look at their financials. Same thing applies, by the way, to Facebook and these other. They're all heavy U.S. centric revenue companies. So just keep that in mind.
So the argument being that because it's a U.S. centric company, that you should. I'm trying to follow the thought process.
Yeah, I care about my users that are paying me money, and the users not paying me money and not bringing me advertising revenue or a cost to me. It's not a public service. It's not like some product that's an altruistic donation from Elon Musk to the world, unless he wants it to be.
He says he wants it to be a free speech platform where everyone is able to voice their opinion freely.
And I think you have to look at what the guy does as opposed to what the guy says. I think if that was true, he'd unban every single person on the platform. He said that he's also said that the policies haven't changed. He's also said that hate speech is no place on Twitter. He's also said to the advertisers he does not want this place to devolve into a dark place or a cesspool or whatever. So there's plenty of conflicting statements. I think he's going to say whatever he needs to say to keep his business successful. He's not going to throw away $40 billion, I don't think. And I think, again, the first things that we've heard is that he's going to start charging more and start charging people to use the service, which is a little antithetical to literally the word free speech. It's free, baby, but it's free, but with a fee. Free fee speech. So I don't know. I think we have to watch. It's a little early days to know what direction Musk is actually going to go in. I think he'll say whatever he needs to say right now.
I agree with you. It's probably too early to tell. I think it's just it's a sad state of affairs. There's an art. I don't know if you just saw what just came out where it said all of the tech companies were colluding with the government in order to suppress information. It's all over social media today, where they all work together to get rid of disinformation. But again, let's say you're the ruling power. Pick any country on earth, and you're the ruling power in that country using Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And you go to the government, or you go to the social platform, and you say, "Hey, these guys are spreading bad information about our government because you're the ruling power." And then the social media platforms say, "Oh, you're right. Let's take it all down." So there's a huge problem that you run into, and not only that, but you're verified and you've given money to the platform, so they know who you are. So there's a lot of danger.
Got it.
To giving lots of information to social media companies when people are in power, and I'm not a leftist or a rightist. I'm a libertarian, but there's danger there.
Do you think Musk overpaid for Twitter? I don't know, actually. I think it remains to be seen. How likely is TikTok to be banned from the States? I actually think that's a really good question. I think it's going to get banned, but that's just me. What do you think the next platform will be after TikTok? I wish I knew. Obviously, there's Gas, Be Real, a bunch of other new ones, so we'll see what happens there. Vine. So one of my friends is the lead developer on Vine, and people are talking about bringing Vine back. Of course, the Vine code base would not work today. So I think you'd have to redo it, but I do think it would be an accelerant for the end of TikTok. I think the TikTok app could be cloned relatively easily. I think it's just the Chinese connection that America really doesn't want to allow TikTok to live, to be frank.
You think that's why Vine is coming back?
Well, we don't know for sure if Vine is coming back, but I do think the U.S. government is very, very against Chinese censorship and Chinese control of.
He posted it coming back, so I mean it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't take Elon's words too seriously. He also told us we'd have Tesla Cybertruck. He told us we'd have a lot of things. The guy tends to be pretty long in the tooth.
I saw Cybertruck in a video game, so I think it's real.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right. He talks before he delivers a lot.
Yeah. We'll see if TikTok hangs in there or not.